focus on the minor prophets because we never do. You know, I mean, how often do you read Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Zechariah? I mean, we don't read them. They're way back there in the back of the Old Testament. I mean, whoever hears about those guys? They're called the minor prophets, and so we think, are they really worth the effort? But they're not minor because they were unimportant. They aren't minor because they had no theological significance in their day. They're minor because they were brief, which makes me think they should be greatly celebrated, right? I mean, these were preachers who didn't have to go on and on and on. They got to the point. The major prophets are called the major just because they wrote a lot of stuff. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, each one of those had their own scroll. It took a whole scroll for Isaiah or Jeremiah. But all the 12 minor prophets were rolled up in just one scroll and were still smaller than Jeremiah and Isaiah. So they didn't have a lot to say, but what they said was poignant and important, and that's what we're going to focus on. Prophets, if you haven't discovered already, could be really weird people. I mean, they were an odd bunch. I mean, we see John the Baptist. What's he doing? He's living out in the desert. He's eating bugs. I mean, that's what it says. He's eating locusts and honey, living on the land. You know, he's wearing a hair shirt. That's odd. That's some oddness. And then he's out there ranting and raving at the Jordan River. But have you thought about Isaiah, who walked around naked for 3 years? Did you know that? For 3 years, this man is walking around naked and barefoot. You know, I guess it got some attention. But why was he doing it? Well, he wasn't just stark raving mad. He was doing it to make a point. He's warning them, you know, you've turned away from God. You've not been faithful. You've not been obedient. A terrible thing is coming. You are going to be stripped bare, was his point. God will strip you bare. The land will be made barren. Everything will be taken away. He made the point. Ezekiel was really odd. I don't know if you've read much of Ezekiel. I love the bones thing. That's really interesting, beautiful. We read that. But then when you get to that wheel in the wheel, and it's sort of like a spaceship and these odd creatures, and you think, well, he's having some vision from outer space, or he's smoking something he shouldn't have been smoking. I don't know. Odd fellow. Did you know he also laid on his side for 390 days, out visible to people for 390 days, on his side, just to make the point that you're not looking God in the face. You've turned aside for 390 years. You've not been faithful. It's a way of making the point. Jeremiah, you might remember, put an ox's yoke around his own neck. This was a big, heavy thing. And he put it around his neck and walked around wearing this, preaching in this, making the point that God is about to put the yoke of a foreign army around your neck, and you, Judah, will be controlled by a foreign army. Well, it's not just the ancient clergy who were odd. There are plenty of us living today who have been equally odd. I read about this fellow, Lawrence Bishop in Ohio, and he decided that he was going to ride a bull. So he put a bull, I don't know what you call it, a cage. He fenced in this bull out in the parking lot of his church. And for weeks in advance, he communicated to people that he, the preacher, was going to ride this raging bull and tame it. Come and see. And a lot of people came to see. And he got on the bull. And he was on it for about 3 seconds. Then he was on the ground. And he got up and preached. You know, brought in a crowd. It did. Chuck McMaster might have brought in a bigger crowd in Kentucky. He decided to have a gun show at the church. Isn't that great? Gun show at the Church of the Prince of Peace. And if you bought a ticket in advance, you had the opportunity, perhaps, of winning a door prize, which was a really nice Glock. Wow, where'd you get that gun? Got it in church. Got that in church. Yeah, boy. Okay, great. Good. Says a lot about the Lord. Troy Grambling, right here in good old Florida. We always have our share of this stuff, don't we? Right here in Florida, he hired a stunt man to work with him so that they put a real car out in the parking lot. And at one point, the clergyman's running, jumps in the front seat of the car, and then the car blows up. Big fire in the parking lot. But he'd worked it all out with the stuntman, so it was a stunt. And then the clergyman reappeared, ta-da, and preached a sermon. I mean, it's not just, back in 8th century BC. It's today too, working it as hard as we can. Hosea, what did he do that was so dramatic? He married a prostitute. Intentionally. Intentionally, he married a prostitute to make a point. Everybody knew she was a prostitute, and that's why he married her. He's making a point. You, Israel, are married to God, but you're the prostitute. God's the faithful lover. You're the prostitute. This is how you're living your life. And then he had some children and gave them the most unfortunate name. You remember he was married to Gomer, which I always think of Gomer Pyle. It messes me up when I'm reading this every time. Married to Gomer, and he names one of his children Lo Rohama, which means no more pity. No more pity? You need to come in and eat supper right now, baby. It's time. You're getting no more pity. No more pity. And he named another one Lo Ami. Not my people. I don't know whose people you are. You're not my people. I mean, is that not weird? Well, why is he doing that? There's a purpose. He's preaching. He's saying, Israel, you get no more pity from God. No more. Over and over and over, he's given you all kinds of grace and love and pity, and it's meant nothing. And then he's saying, you know what? In addition to that, you're really not even my people anymore. I don't know whose people you've become, but you're not mine. In a way, it is kind of sad, the lengths to which prophets and priests have gone to try to get our attention, to try to refocus us on God. I don't think it's a surprise that today we find so many churches, big and small, that really have moved into the entertainment industry, right? I mean, it's so hard to get people's attention. Well, what do? Well, you have a mall-like building where you have little shops and you have coffee and you can get breakfast there, and you go into church and it's really entertainment. I mean, it's a lot of great music and a show's being put on. I mean, it's sad if you think about it, that the church has to become like the culture to attract us to the gospel of Jesus, that it's not attractive enough in and of itself. But we do live in a world where it's easy to get distracted. I mean, you think about it, there's so much out there to draw us away. You've got all kinds of TV opportunities, all these great series that they're making all the time, so you can just sit in front of the television day and night. Big movies, Mission Impossible just came out, right? I mean, everybody's flocking to the theater. It's exciting business. Sports events pull us in. Technology, cars, clothes, there are all these things, all these distractions constantly pulling us. Think, how much time do you give to the Lord on a daily basis compared with how much time you give to all that other stuff? I mean, we think a 15-minute devotion is like exhausting, but we can watch a 2-hour movie without a problem. We can shop for days without a problem. But 15 minutes every day, it's like a yoke around our necks. Hard to do. There's a sadness in that, I think. So what we're seeing in the 8th century is really no different. It might have been different things that gained their focus, but it was still about money and power and security, desire, getting caught up in all this other stuff, being pulled further and further away from God. And so you have these prophets that God raises up. And yeah, maybe they seem a little crazy, but maybe the times required that kind of craziness. And maybe it took people like them to be able and willing to hear God, to take God seriously, and to communicate God to other people, whether or not they were willing to hear. Y'all remember that I preached on Hosea. Well, you might remember. I preached on Hosea back on Easter Day. What I did is I retold the Hosea story without you knowing that I was retelling the Hosea story initially, and the prodigal son story by making them contemporary. And it's a shocking thing. And you feel the shock of it when it's made contemporary, when you have this fellow who's just such a good lad, and he falls in love with this woman, and he wants so badly to have her for himself, and he marries her, and then she goes off and is with another man, And he forgives her and takes her back, and then she goes off, and she's with another man, and he takes her back. And it happens over and over and over. She even has a child by another guy, and he takes that child in too and raises it as his own. And you think, are you just stupid? Who does that over and over? Wake up, dude. You know, she's not yours, and she's not going to be. Cut the string. Be done. But no, he's not. He's never done. He's never done. And then you realize that Hosea is preaching to us. He's saying, you're the ones that keep going off, turning away from your spouse, God, and going off and doing your own thing, whatever it is you want to do, over and over. And he takes you back, and you do it again. And he takes you back, and you do it again. And you think, God, do you never get sick of this? Hosea preaches, on the one hand, about this lover, this sad, sad lover who loves this group of people so deeply that over and over he allows himself to be hurt and mistreated for the sake of the people. But on the other hand, if you read a little further into Hosea, he uses another image, image of father and child, parent and child. You know, that you've got this parent who has given everything to this child, who has nurtured and loved and cared for and raised this child in the very best way possible. And what does the child do? The child doesn't give a rip. The child, selfish, spoiled brat, you know, who just does whatever she wants to do. Doesn't matter. You know, it's like when Belinda was reading in the early part of that Hosea 11 passage, I was thinking of the child. Have you ever seen this? Have you ever experienced this? You're in the grocery store, and here's this child running off, pulling the cans off the shelf, and you say, Tommy, come back here. Tommy runs around to the next corner, pulls more cans. Tommy, you better come back here. You're chasing the child, goes running down, pushes the cart aside. Tommy, you need to come back here. You know, and you think you want to grab that kid and say, you know. Well, that's the image Hosea is giving you there in chapter 11. You know, like some bratty child, we just go running down, doing whatever we want, and God's saying, come back here, and we ignore that voice. We keep, come back here. And you think, how many times in my life have I done that very thing, like some spoiled child, ignoring the voice of God, doing my own thing, my own way, because that's what I want to do. But then expecting, he'll take me back. He'll get over it. He'll be all right. He's God. But what does it do to the relationship? What does it do in terms of my own heart, my own heart's awareness and affection for God? Is there any depth of reality to that? Early in the text, Hosea writes this. This is God speaking. She, meaning Israel, she did not know that it was I who gave her grain and wine and oil, and who lavished her with silver and gold, which she then gave to Baal, pagan god. So it's God saying, you know, Israel doesn't even realize that everything she has, I gave to her. She thinks she came by it on her own. She thinks that she managed all of this. All of it I have given over and over. I have given it to her sacrificially. And what does she do? She turns and she uses it in the service of another god. And then later, he writes, this is God again speaking to Israel. I would rather have you love me than make sacrifices. I would rather you know me than make burnt offerings. He's saying, don't just go through the rituals. You know, anybody can show up and light a candle, bow, make a sacrifice, give some money. That's not what I'm after. I want your love. I want you to know me like I know you. I mean, for me, there's something very moving about that. We've been studying world religions over the last 4 weeks. We made our way through Hinduism and Buddhism in Judaism and Islam. And I think there's much to be respected in all those traditions. I think we can find elements of truth and beauty in every one of them. But there are a couple of things that stand out for me. One of the most important is that in the Abrahamic faiths, that is Judaism and Christianity and Islam, we believe in a personal God. You know, unlike the other world religions where there's nirvana or Brahman, who is just this sort of nothingness, that your goal in life is to just get off the dadgum wheel of life so that you can just be in a place of nothingness. But that's not the Abrahamic faiths. It's about a personal God, a God who created and who knows us and wants to engage with us and loves us. And in my mind, you don't see that anywhere more clearly in the crucifixion of Jesus and in his life. It wasn't just the crucifixion. The crucifixion is paramount, but just the way he gave himself away to people, how all people mattered, that every person mattered, and that he loved them all and was willing to sacrifice for each of them. It's that nature of this God that draws me in so deeply, truly knowing, believing, and experiencing a God who loves and wants to be in a love relationship with us. Now that is where life change can happen. When we can allow ourselves to get to the point that our hearts are really vulnerable to that kind of relationship with this God who created. It seems to me that that's the only way it's ever going to be real for us, and the only way that it's ever going to garner the attention that God deserves is if that heart relationship comes about. Colin Rupnarine, who's not here today, but who has been participating in our parish for a while now and was there for the world religions classes, he came up to me after one of them. And the first one he came up to me afterwards is after I just preached on Hinduism. And he came up to me and he said, "You did a great job." I said, "Thank you so much." He said, "You know, my whole family is Hindu." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad I didn't know about that before I did this, because then I would have been thinking the whole time, well, I'm saying the wrong stuff. I hope this is right." And he said, "No, but you really did a great job." And then he came up later and he said, "You know, the thing that stands out for me that is particularly important," and he's absolutely right about this, "is grace." He said, "You know, I see in all the others that it's about achieving, about making myself good enough for God, about proving myself somehow through the eightfold plan, through the fivefold path, through the 613 laws. But in the person of Jesus, what we discover is that it's all grace, that we can't do anything to earn God's love and care, that it's freely given. It's this gift that is just extended and is ours. You know, you remember, Paul tells us that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It's not a matter of us making ourselves good enough that he's then willing to die. It's that he loves us so dearly. But before we ever know or love him, it's already there. It can't be earned. It's there on the offer. All we have to do is accept it, receive it, and allow it to shape our lives. I think that is the heart of our faith. Grace, love, this God who knows us and cares about us. And I realize that there are a whole lot of things that draw us away from God. But I also have experienced in my own life that when I am most deeply engaged with God, that's when life has its richest moments and when I discover its greatest depth and possibility. Don't ever just slough off the minor prophets. They're worth reading. Amen.